Welcome back, you terrible monsters of mine. My video for the worst horror movies of the year did so well that I couldn't help but feel a little touched by all you little devils. This year has been rough with the channel, and for horror in general. Almost thought about turning all of this in and just keeping all of my terrible deeds and watches to myself, but because of you, I feel reborn. Today we are talking about the most overrated and underrated movies of the year. Keep in mind that none of these movies were on my list for the worst of the year, and none of them will be on my best of the year, and it's for a good reason. Hopefully you'll be steered away from the popular garbage and directed towards some underrated gems instead. I will be spoiling the overrated movies, but only briefly going over the underrated ones. Let's get spooky. Five Nights at Freddy's.
Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's, where fantasy and fun come to life.
Okay.
Five Nights at Freddy's is a movie adaptation of the Five Nights at Freddy's video game franchise that has like 13 games, a few books, and who the fuck knows what else. It's a game series that's just a security guard watching security tapes while trying to not get jump scared to death. Not much to base an entire movie off of, but that didn't stop the makers giving this thing the good old college try, even though we got the Banana Splits movie and Willy's Wonderland, which both sucked. So the bar was pretty low from the get-go, but here we are. The movie follows a security guard older brother who takes this shit job in order to show child services that he is stable enough to raise his younger sister, instead of giving custody over to their greedy, idiotic aunt who thinks checks from the government for taking care of one child is some sort of gold mine worth scheming for. This movie is overrated, and here's why. The reason this job exists is bullshit. The owner of the place wants to hire security to protect an abandoned pizza place at night. The place has been closed down for quite some time, so it's not making any money, and he wants to waste even more money by hiring security to watch it overnight, even though there's nothing of value in this place.
What? Oh, come on!
At least in Willy's Wonderland, the governor got to keep the cars from the people who died while watching over and cleaning the place. It also kept the monsters fed so they wouldn't roam outside of the place and feed on the locals. I cannot believe I am defending Willy's Wonderland here. Thanks, FNAF. I can't believe this movie made so much money. I get that there is a lot of name recognition behind it and they made it available for younger audiences, but it's a murder mystery movie where the killer couldn't be more obvious because it's a small cast film. There are only so many options for a killer. Couldn't be more skippable. Though there is no reason why this movie wouldn't get a sequel because of how financially successful it was.
Whippy!
I may not have been a fan of the games, but even if I was, as a movie, it's pretty mediocre. Brooklyn 45.
Make yourselves known. What the hell is that?
Brooklyn 45 is a Shudder original about 5 war friends meeting up just a few months after World War II ended. One of them has an idea to have a seance to contact their dead wife for some needed closure. This movie is underrated because it's a pretty well-made drama. The characters are well written, it may not have much horror in it, but it's pretty good at building tension in a single room where people's personalities have to be forced out whether they like it or not. I did a full review on this flick on my channel if you want to hear me go more into it. I will admit it's not a perfect movie, hence why it's not on my best of for the year, but if you're a fan of movies where things get more personal with the characters, I think you will have a pretty good time watching this one. Insidious The Red Door. Insidious The Red Door is the latest, and so far it is the last in the Insidious franchise, thank the Lord. I am sorry, but I was a huge fan of Insidious 1 and 2, but all of the following movies have just gotten shittier one after the other. The Red Door has a lot of returning cast members, which is pretty nice, but it focuses on Dalton going to college and his astral projecting ability has been coming back to him and his dad, but since their memories were wiped at the end of the second flick, they are trying to figure things out and seal the Red Door to the lipstick face demon for forever. This movie is overrated for plenty of reasons. This, I believe, is one of the most profitable horror movies of the year, and this is why we can't have nice things. Plenty of much better movies should have gotten that money.
But no!
It had to go more towards a movie that had only name recognition behind it. This movie adds absolutely nothing to the franchise. We learn nothing new about the Further, nor the lipstick-faced demon. The runtime is split pretty evenly between Dalton and his dad. The dad deals with some made-up backstory on his dad that we knew absolutely nothing about before, so it begs the question of why they decided to add it in now. Dalton has this college crush side chick who is mostly just annoying. The movie has one good scare and the rest are pretty predictable jump scares. Another terrible idea the writers and directors had was bringing back characters to have 1 to 2 lines and then doing absolutely nothing afterwards. The Dice Guy from Insidious 2, 2 lines at the beginning then disappears for forever. Specs and Tucker are YouTube personalities that just explain what we, the audience, already know about the Further, but since Dalton had his memory wiped, he had to look them up. Listen to their 2 lines in the middle of the movie, and then they just disappeared for forever. Elise comes back 2 times, once in the middle and in the ending, and she's pretty much just wasted in both scenes. Crazy, especially when you remember how much of a role she still had in the other movies before and after her death. I've been done with this franchise for a while, so I am a bit glad that they stated that there are no more plans for another movie anytime soon. I also did a longer review on this one on my channel if you want to know more about it. Wrath of Becky.
Just one more thing, real quick. Your friend on the dock could use a hand.
Wrath of Becky is the sequel to Becky, which was a knockoff Home Alone, but instead of a clever blonde boy fighting off home invaders with cleverly made tricks and traps in a PG setting, Becky, a blonde girl, fought off a few Nazis with some traps, a lot of luck, and a rated R setting with some cheap practical effects. Wrath of Becky is underrated because it improves on Becky in every sense of the word. The violence looks better, the violence has a more sense of fun behind it, and it's pretty consistent in being a bit ridiculous when the ridiculousness starts. It's a shame that this movie was only in select theaters when it came out. I think it could have done pretty well if it was straight to streaming for free or it came to more theaters. Not a perfect movie, but overall I'd say this movie was fun and I would be open to another sequel. The Pope's Exorcist.
I call it evil.
The Pope's Exorcist is yet another Exorcist movie in a long list of Exorcist movies that does the same shit as all of the others that lean more on the religious side. Russell Crowe plays a pretty fun and charismatic Italian exorcist for the Pope directly. He is sent on a mission to Spain to help out a small family that just recently moved into an old abbey. This movie is overrated because there is nothing really special about it. It's a possession film that has no teeth on it. Nobody dies, nothing really that bad happens to anyone important. The possessed kid says some swears that seem forced and he cups his mom's boob. It ends in a way that opens up to a series of movies that would have been more interesting if they added something new to a possession type flick, but it's just not there. Almost reminds me of the dark verse that was tried and failed by Hollywood by having this secret organization that fights monsters, but with demons. But it's just priests exorcising demons in the way that they have done a dozen times before. Just not enough imagination behind this flick and what they were trying to build up. I have also done a longer review for this on my channel if you want more details. Renfield.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you okay? I need to get out of a toxic relationship.
Renfield is a movie focused on Dracula's servant and what he has done for him throughout the centuries. This movie is underrated because for such a fun movie, it made absolute dick in the box office. What a shame. I will admit it's not a perfect movie, mostly at the fault of Awkwafina and Jean-Ralphio. Awkwafina can't act. She's not funny, and Jean-Ralphio is just an obnoxious, spoiled son of a mob boss. The movie's main leads nail it. Nick Cage is a surprisingly good Dracula because they give him a lot of dope powers, and Nick Hoult is a good Renfield with his powers and his desperate attempt to free himself from Dracula. It's worth a watch if you want to have a good time. Scream 6. Scream 6 follows not too long after the events of Scream 5. The two sisters and their twin friends have moved to New York, and of course they encounter stab franchise fanatics because that's all this franchise really is. Scream 6 is overrated for reasons that seem pretty obvious to me, at least. The movie lies to your damn face when it comes to the threat level. Not a single important character dies. Both the twins get shanked and are left for dead, but end up living. The legacy characters also get shanked, but they end up surviving. All of the villains die. Whoop-de-fucking-do. The only new thing that this movie has really added to the franchise is that there were 3 killers this time, and all they managed to do was kill 3 characters that meant fuck all with the story. Anybody else realize that this is the same movie as Scream 2? And keep in mind, Scream 5 was pretty much the same movie as Scream 1. In Scream 1, the killers were the boyfriend and a member of the friend group. Scream 2 was the family of the boyfriend in Scream 1. Scream 6 is also the family of the boyfriend in Scream 5. I think it was the right call that Jenna Ortega backed out of the franchise and chose Wednesday over this. I know Melissa Barrera was axed from the franchise, and honestly, I don't really give a shit about the reason. And now information has dropped that the director of Scream 7 is out. So I'm having a hard time believing that this franchise is anything but fucked for the latest of their films. But anyways, these movies have become pretty inconsequential to me. I did a fuller review on this on my channel if you want to check it out. Sympathy for the Devil.
You got me confused with someone else.
Really? I'm not who you think I am. I never even told you who I think you are, so how could you know you're not who I think you are? Tick, 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 tick.
Sympathy for the Devil has Nick Cage being a crazy passenger, forcing himself to be driven around by the guy from the Suicide Squad movies. This movie is underrated because the main characters turn in pretty solid performances. We do get a pretty solid crazy Nick Cage moment, which we will never get tired of, and I think it's a shame that not more people are talking about this flick. It is pretty similar to A History of Violence, but that was a pretty solid movie. So a similar movie with 2 different leads turning out solid performances and roles that they try to make their own, I mean, I'm all for it. Go check it out. Totally killer. Totally Killer is the slasher version of Back to the Future. This movie is overrated because it's a dark comedy where 70% of the humor is just a Gen Z person going back in time and saying how problematic the 80s were. Get fucked. These are the laziest kinds of jokes you could write in a movie like this. They tried to throw a wrench into the story by stating that because the main chick went back in time, history was changed, so her knowledge of what happened doesn't actually help her much in the end. But as a slasher movie, it should be a given to make the kills special and make them stand out, but the kills in this movie were just, what's the word? Mediocre. Yep, that's the one. Yeah, if you want to do a fun slasher flick that's basically a parody of a popular older movie, just watch Happy Death Day. VHS 85.
Tell us what they are. You should just watch them.
VHS 85 is the latest in the VHS franchise, which is an anthology series that includes every kind of horror subgenre type story that you could think of. What we get treated to in this one is occult, some supernatural stuff, some godlike beings, and some aliens. This movie is underrated because I fucking said so. Just kidding. But seriously, this franchise has never had a high bar for me because it is an anthology series. Only so little time to tell the story, and I always appreciate their creativity with the different kinds of stories that they tell. I am all about variety in my horror, and VHS does exactly that. I want more people to go into Shudder to watch it so they can keep turning out sequels. And that's all I got for you today. There were a few others that were underrated and overrated, but I didn't want to make this video too long, and there were plenty of middle-of-the-road movies, but considering no one watched my decent horror movies of the year last year, and I am incapable of coming up with another clickbaity type title, I guess they will stay lost in the vast library of shit that I have seen. And you wouldn't want to know all that I have seen. Thanks for watching, and stay spooky. There will be more to talk about soon.